Let me show you a poem that I created, an animated, interactive poem that I created. It's called Climate-Related Unicode Symbols for a Breaking World. When I click on that, we get the title of the piece. Click on it again, reanimates. If I click on this, it goes to the first stanza of the poem called Sun. That is a symbol of the sun that is animated. And if I click on this one, we see the snowman, red and orange snowman, but snowman, this is a symbol of snow. And click on the next one, and to nobody's surprise, we have clouds. Click on the next one, and it's of rain, which we saw earlier. You can also change things about this animation. If I click up here, we see that we can change, say, the size. Let me make the rain much bigger. There it is, much bigger now. Let me increase the speed. And let me increase the density, that is the number of them. You can see over in the bottom corner the frames per second and the number of texts. I've set it to 641 texts, but it's only displaying 262 texts because if it were to display 641 texts at that size, the frame rate would be lower than it is right now. So let me bring down the size of the texts, and then we will see the number of them go up. It's easily 641 texts now. Let me bring the speed down so that we can see each of the rain figures more clearly. And then if I bring the density up further, then we can see the number of texts climbing up here. I've set it to 2,000, and it's currently going up right now. Of course, once you hit like several hundred, it's hard to tell the difference between several hundred and 2,000. But there we go. Anyway, let's go to the next stanza in this poem called Recycle. And sure enough, we see that it's the recycle symbol. And if I click the recycle symbol, it reanimates and reanimates and reanimates. This one is actually a symbol of a power plant. Reanimate that. And what are the settings? Let's go to the options. It's set at 200. Let me bring that down a little bit. And let me make them a little bit smaller so that we get a kind of a quicker animation. Let me bring the speed up. Yeah. So there's power plant. The next one is fossil fuel. What are the settings for fossil fuel? Density 500. Well, it's getting up there, but it's kind of slow. Let's increase the speed a little bit. And the frames per second are only 9 frames per second right now because we do have that many texts. If we bring the density of the text down so that there's only, say, 171 texts, then we see that the frames per second has increased. The frames per second is now 20 frames per second. Why is it faster when there's fewer fossil fuels to move around? Well, because it takes some computational oomph to move around each of them. And its ability to do that depends on the skookumness of your computer, depends on the power of your computer. Okay, so what's the next symbol? Skull and crossbones. Well, kind of a pink skull and crossbones, even. Let's go to the settings. Let's increase the speed. Let's increase the size. And let's reanimate that one and see what we get. Well, it changes color. Okay, so let's click it again. It stays that color. Click it again. A little bit different color. Click it again. A little bit different color. So let's go into the options and increase, say, the size. There we have large skull and crossbones. Let's go to the next animation. This is of lightning. Go to the next one. This is, you wouldn't know it, but this is actually a symbol for a cemetery. So, rather a lot of cemeteries here. The density is set to 500, and it's currently at 414, pardon me. But if I bring the size down a little bit, it will probably go to 500. And sure enough, it does. 12 frames per second, 500 texts. Let's bring the size up. Let's bring the size up a whole lot. So it gets to 422, well, it gets to 440 texts. Okay. And then the next one is sustainability. Somewhat of a more positive symbol. Sustainability is, of course, a very important symbol in our current situation. And let's increase the density of it to 313. Let's increase the size. So we can see what happens when we make changes of different types. Now I'm going to bring the size way down. And we see that the symbols are very small. Let's make them a little bit larger. A little bit larger. There we go. Let's bring the density down a bit. Let's change the trail length. If I bring the trail length down to 0, then we see there's no trails. If I put the trail length at 1, then we see that each symbol has short trails. If I bring the trails length up to 7, then we see that each symbol, the trails for each symbol simply continue. They get as long as the symbol has been on the screen. And then finally, the poem ends with the symbol for a flower. It ends on a note of regeneration. So the poem tells a kind of a story of destruction and regeneration.